Hi everyone, thanks for joining the 12th AMCF webinar. My name is Sarah Buchanan. I'm an impact manager for retrofit at Best and I'm going to be your host for today. So we'll just get through some housekeeping, of course. We've got the session being recorded today and it'll be on our YouTube channel next week. We'd really like to get you involved with questions, and you can do that in the chat box at the side of your screen. If we don't answer any of your questions, then we'll come back to you later today. If you would answer our poll questions, we'd really love that, get you engaged. It helps give us feedback. And also, if you could reply to the feedback questionnaire at the end of the session, that would really help us focus our webinars in the future, and we really appreciate your views. So, it's myself, Tom Warren, the Sustainability Impact Manager, and Sam Patterson, who are going to be speaking with you today. The session will last for around an hour, and we will send all presentations on to you. So, without further ado, I think we're going to move to our first poll. So, the programme that we're going to talk about today is the Advanced Manufacturing Challenge Fund, Make It Smart Hub, and it's just to check the kind of understanding of the audience. So, tell us what you know about it. Did you realise it was about increasing manufacturing capability? Did you know that there was free trial and use of digital manufacturing equipment? We can give you advice on projects, technical support, or have you not heard about Advanced Manufacturing Challenge Fund and you'd like to find out more? So it just gives us a sense in the audience, and hopefully by the end of the webinar, you'll have a much better idea. So we'll just wait a couple of seconds and that should come up on the screen. Yeah, so quite a lot of you know it's about increasing manufacturing, and yeah, 76% not a clue. Well, hopefully we'll change that by the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tom Warren. He's the Impact Manager for Sustainability, and he's going to give you an overview of the programme, and then you'll hand back over to me. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, welcome all, and particularly welcome those who are joining us from the Highlands and Islands Architectural Association, who we've co-advertised this event with. And this is the first time we've done a lunchtime webinar in conjunction with that partner. So hopefully you'll get something from this. I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, I'm just having a slight problem with that.
Hi Tom, that's it coming up now for us, if you can
right.
put it into...
Thank you, thanks.
That's
right,
okay.
That wasn't clear my end, right, thank you.
And just can you make it full screen, if that's okay? That's
yeah,
it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Got an able team of support in the background, so appreciate that. So, as Sarah said, I'm Tom Warren. I'm an impact manager. My remit within Best is to work across the Highlands and Islands. So, for those in that geography, if you haven't met me before, welcome. I'm going to give a bit of an overview of the context that Built Environment Smarter Transformations, or BEST, works in. And then some of the specifics around the Make It Smart Hub project. So we often use this quote, which I think is quite a nice way of covering the issue. And I think the key thing here is winning slowly around climate change is in effect the same as losing. So we need to do things at pace and at scale. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with the scale of the construction ecosystem. These figures here give some overview of what that looks like in Scotland, and within the Highlands and Islands, the last point there about the 99% of businesses being SMEs is particularly pertinent, particularly within some of the smaller architectural practices. sorry, just having a slight issue with viewing my screen. Hang on a second. So hopefully we're aware of some of the negative impacts that construction has on the environment around energy usage and material waste and CO2 emissions. So again, scene setting for the context that we're working in. Hopefully all are aware of the positive commitments that have been made in Scotland around zero carbon by 2045. So again, both domestic and non-domestic here. Some of this will be touched on further in the kind of retrofit parts of the presentation. So who are we? Who's built Environment Smart Transformation? We're one of 7 innovation centres in Scotland. The others are shown on screen there. Some working in specific industry sectors, like ourselves within built environments, and all in its broadest meaning in terms of professional services, like many who are on the webinar today, and developers and the supply chain construction partners. All of us are supported by the funders shown on the bottom of the screen there, and we're very grateful for Highlands Enterprise in terms of some of the work we're partnering with them in that region. These are our mission statements, and I think the key one here is the last one around accelerating the built environment's transition. Different organisations, different stakeholders will be at different stages of that journey. So it's very much about picking up the conversation at whatever stage you're at and looking at the next steps. Like all of the innovation centres, we work between a number of different stakeholders, and this can be summarised as a sort of triangle of academic partners, so all of the university sector, college sector in Scotland, industry, which is probably a lot of the audience today, and in all its different forms, and then the public sector, whether that's through Scottish Government, local authorities, or other NHS or the parts of the public sector. And what we'd like to see, or what we do, is sit in the centre of that, unlocking value across these different networks. This is done through a number of different applications, some of which we're going to see more of as the webinar progresses, and the different techniques that are used to deliver this. Some of the large figures around the impact that we've had over the last 8 years. Prior to BEST, we were called Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, which some of you may have been more familiar with us by that name. All of these programmes are now delivered under our Accelerate to Zero programme, and this is made up of 4 different thematic areas. So we're going to hear today from Sarah on retrofit and Sam on sustainability, but there are other elements as shown on screen there. We're fortunate to have some excellent physical facilities in the form of 2 innovation factories. So both the aerial photos on screen there, left and right, are in Blantyre, south of Glasgow, and so one of the challenges working in the Highlands of Ireland is how we provide access to the facilities here in the factories, remotely and via mobile deployable equipment, which we'll see some of shortly. There's a short video which gives an overview of the equipment got in the factory. So quite a lot of what's on screen here is around mass timber construction, methods of construction around timber. And the facilities are set up for tours, for visits. So we would welcome anyone who's able to visit us in to Blantyre to do so. We're one of 32 United Nations Centres of Excellence, so that's something that was awarded in 21. We work very closely with the Scottish Government across a number of different departments and sectors, particularly the Scottish Construction Leadership Forum. So there's some information on screen there. We can cover that in more details later if needed. We have a number of specific programs to work with industry partners. So we're very keen to hear from people for future rounds of built environment change makers and innovation champions. And these are opportunities for individuals to become involved directly with us and to receive support. Coming on to the Make It Smart Hub, which is the kind of core focus of the projects that this webinar is looking at. This is a programme funded by Scottish Enterprise, working across the Highlands and Islands, and as it says on screen there, is to provide a one-stop shop for construction and manufacturing in the Highlands and Islands. This is being delivered in a number of different ways. Just to give an overview of that project in terms of the funders and the kind of scale of support, we're doing this in partnership with UHI and Inverness, and there's going to be some physical equipment, 5-axis CNC machine and a virtual sawmill training simulator are going to be available for SMEs to use in Inverness later this year, in this coming quarter. Make It Smart Hub has a number of remote deployable pieces of digital equipment. So one here is the Leica BLK 360 scanner. So that is a very small, very mobile 360 scanner that produces point cloud surveys. So this is excellent for either existing buildings, monitoring progress on site, as the photo on the right shows. The image in the middle shows some of the kind of photo quality that is produced through the 3D scanning. It's also got some thermal imaging properties as well, so it's quite unique in terms of integrating all those different functions into one very fast and relatively easy to use piece of technology. So this is available for demonstrations, so please get in touch if you want to know more about that. Another piece of equipment, a sort of different scale of support, is around the heat flow meter. We have an excellent video available on the Make It Smart Hub portal and YouTube. Our colleague Sam, we're going to hear from later, demonstrates how the heat flow meter works, but in essence it's there to measure the thermal conductivity of materials, generally insulation products, or products in development. So this allows companies to test materials at an early stage to get very fast and accurate results as to the thermal performance. Currently this equipment is residing at best in Blantyre, but later in the year we're looking at opportunities to locate this within Inverness. We're going to touch on one particular support project that we've been working with over the last year. This is with 722 Systems. Just to give an overview of their product, this is an off-site manufacturing product that can be manhandled, doesn't require craneage, quite small scale components, as can be seen on the illustration there. And they had a challenge around how to increase production and some elements of automation of these modules. So we worked with them to explore CNC production of jigs for then use in their factory to cut the boxes and the different cutouts. So on the top left, the top photos there are the CNC equipment in our factory producing the jigs, and then at the bottom the equipment, the jigs in use, which really speeded up production and accuracy. Off the back of that support and through their own development and investment, they've actually purchased their own CNC machine. So this is in the facility in South Uist, where they can now, there's automation of the manufacturing process, and just to quickly go through some of the photos of what that product is then able to deliver in terms of off-site and modular construction. So from what they've explained, this build to get the structure or the above ground structure up went up in a day. So thank you for your time. Now hand you back to Sarah.
Everyone see me okay? See the presentation okay?
Yep, thanks, Sarah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom, that's great. I can't tell you how many times I practiced that and I said Highlands Architectural Association, so apologies to our partner. I should have mentioned you at the start. So I'm going to speak for about 15 minutes and give you an overview of what we're doing to support in retrofit. As you know, 80% of the buildings that already exist in Scotland are going to be around for the 2045/2050 targets. And it's how do we deliver that at scale? So we have a dedicated team at Best. We champion best practices for retrofit. We try to deal with the supply chain challenge in that we provide training in our amazing factory space. We also, as Tom detailed, have the place next door. It's a bit of a blank canvas at the moment, and we are looking for ideas. We're going to have our passive house training rigs situated there. We've got retrofit training platforms that we've created in order to train on detailing, air tightness testing, insulation cutting and barriers. And we also hope to use the building as a kind of, living lab for experimentation for industrial retrofit for kind of cladding detail. So if you have ideas, get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. We're also working with academics, so we're trying to embed a lot of the new low carbon design techniques into curriculums. So I naively thought at the start of this presentation, when I reached out to a couple of architects, that perhaps the kind of new build standard, I just want to touch on that first, might not be well known in the industry. And because I'm trying to look at CPD and fit a lot in, there are a number of standards that already exist on the new build side in terms of net zero guidance, best practice. These have all been ratified through VIAS, REBA, CIBSE, working with the UK Green Building Council. So a good place to start before you think about retrofit in terms of CPD is having a look at all of these standards. Now, unfortunately, I don't have time to go through them today, but you've got the Net Zero Public Sector Building Standard, which has been developed with Zero Waste Scotland and looks at circular economy principles. The REBA 2030, all of them take account of operational energy, which is what we need to think about in terms of reducing energy demand for retrofit. So please do have a look at these, and Tom and I's time can be dedicated in kind to any SME that works in the High Region. So if you're looking for further CPD or you're working on projects and you want some help, our time and kind can be given to any company until June, so get in touch with us. I have lifted the heat and building targets, the ones that I think are relevant for retrofit. It's a hefty read. There's a number of documents actually on the public sector side that would be good if you want to understand where the financing is coming from, where the kind of direction of travel is for the next 10 years. If you're speaking to clients and you really want to engage and influence, then an understanding of the public sector context is a really good place to start. So things like the heat and building supply chain, the energy efficiency route map, and I'll send all of these on. You've got the heat and buildings strategy, the just transition and energy strategy, which has just been announced and I haven't had a chance to go through yet. But if any of these policies you want a deeper dive on, just get in touch. But yeah, by 2045, all homes and buildings in Scotland must have significantly reduced their energy use. And almost all buildings must be using a zero emissions heating system. That is tougher in a rural, traditional, historic context. We all know that. And hopefully some of the guidance that I referenced today will really help with that. We have all homes to reach equivalent by 2033. That is in the homeowner section as well. So there's a huge 70% of the homes that are currently out there at the moment on the domestic side are homeowners or private homeowners. It's how do we educate that section that these changes are coming. This is the direction of travel. And of course, we have to look at the kind of de-electrification of heat. Now, this is a bit of a repeat slide from earlier. So these are the non-domestic targets that we have to hit for the heat and building strategy. So whether you agree with the targets, think it's a challenge. Somebody referenced it to me this week as trying to design an aeroplane before Heathrow is built, which I thought was a nice soundbite. So these are challenging targets. We've got a huge mammoth task ahead of us, but we're going to do it if we work together. And it's about taking the supply chain, taking everybody on the journey together. And I really do believe that we can do it. Energy efficiency has been going on in Scotland in the social housing sector for decades. In 2014, through the energy efficiency route map, it's detailed here, the ESH1 compliance and the ESH2 consultation is currently out. They've been working to energy efficiency targets for almost a decade. So if you want to look at really good examples of domestic retrofit, I would look to the social housing sector. There's a number of passive house schemes, Enerfit passive house schemes, and there's a number of Enerfit schemes currently being undertaken. There's private rented sector legislation to bring the private rented sector up to speed with the social housing sector on the domestic side. And there are a number of legislation changes that will be introduced in the next 4 or 5 years. So this is just to give you the context of why everyone's talking about retrofit. There are massive changes coming, particularly when we look at the scale of what needs to be delivered. So how are we going to do that? By a whole systems approach. And I wanted to mention the LHES documents. These are the local heat and energy efficiency strategies, which all local authorities in Scotland are mandated to deliver by December this year. So we're going to be seeing a lot of adverts for LHES officers, I think. And there's also a number that are already in place. There is a Scottish Government contact who can give you a list of the officers. And this is where local authorities will have to lead on the development of the kind of whole systems strategy. There was a number of pilots that have been conducted. Highland Council and Shetland Council were involved in those pilots, so their LHEs are further ahead. And this is the long-term plan for just decarbonising heat. So where are the opportunities, for example, for district heat systems? That is tougher in a rural context. The business case doesn't quite stack up. And it will also provide a zoning strategy within the local authority. So if you're an architect, designer, installer, and you're looking to find out where are the potential zones, what needs to feed into that, then start with your LHEs, get in touch with your local authority. You may or may not know that all large companies have to, and have done for the last 10 years, report their carbon emissions and their carbon reduction strategy already through the SECR reporting, which is Streamlined Energy and Carbon Reporting, and the ESOS schemes, which is the Energy Savings Opportunity Schemes. Public sector bodies all have to already report their carbon emissions and their reduction strategies. All of those strategies will then, and social housing and the owner-occupied sector will then feed into this kind of strategy review that the councils are going to be undertaking. That will then feed into the huge amounts of data that we'll need to have a data strategy around how we share all that information. And then the strategic zoning and pathways. So where is the low-hanging fruit? Where are they going to start? So my advice to want to find out what's happening in your local area is find out what's happening with your LHES plans. In terms of retrofit guidance, just as there are a number of new build standards to consider, there are also a number of retrofit standards to consider. So the LETI Climate Design Guide was released, I think, 2017. And the good thing about LETI is it's been developed with industry. So it's designers, it's architects, it's specifiers, have all come together and have created this climate emergency retrofit guide. So it's various building typologies, domestic, non-domestic, commercial and retail. And if you haven't had a look at that, that's a really great place to start. The EnerFit standard is on the domestic side, and it is the kind of retrofit version of Passive House. So this is a low carbon design standard, which is a fabric first approach, taking into account thermal insulation, ventilation strategies, thermal modelling, thermal bridging, all of the good stuff that you that I assumed was getting taught at university, which you find out when you get out into industry. It's a step-by-step retrofit process. It's a whole house approach. We're moving away from single measures. It's not just about just doing the windows, just doing the insulation. It's about understanding how all of those elements work together. And with a budget in mind, the EnerFit standard uses PHPP modelling, which is the Passive House kind of software modelling that you use within the Passive House standard. So there really needs to be a kind of upskilling, if you like, within the design practices, that, you know, modelling is going to be more and more a part of what everyone needs to know about in terms of energy demand reduction. The AECB retrofit standard is from the Association of Energy Conscious Building. Again, it's a whole house approach. It's considering fabric first. We all know that heat pumps don't work in leaky, drafty houses, so it's about a fabric first approach. And it has slightly less onerous targets to hit than the EnerFit standard. The Energy Sprong is an interesting model. This is looking at like an off-site manufactured approach to retrofit. And for want of a better expression, it's essentially putting a T-cosy, industrialised panels on the outside of the houses. It's also a movement in procurement model and financing model. It's energy as a service. So if you're spending a lot of money on a large-scale domestic retrofit project, and you're taking EPC, EFG, and you're taking it to A or B, then there's a cost to that. It's about introducing kind of an energy charge, if you like, to the resident. So I can also do a deeper dive into Energy Sprong. It's only been used in the social housing market at the moment. However, we do see that once the supply chain's in place in Scotland, then that's a model that could be more popular. So the key principles of EnerFit, just as I've discussed, is improved thermal insulation, so reduction of thermal bridges, thinking about heat loss and wall detailing, any junction detailing, considerably improved air tightness, the use of high quality windows, your ventilation strategy. So as we know, in traditional buildings, there are material considerations, there are location considerations. Sometimes they've been built before building standards. So how do we model that building to fully understand how the building physics operates, and the interventions that we're making aren't going to cause unintended consequences. So thinking about moisture, condensation risk, open vapour barriers, all of these things that you need to consider in traditional historic buildings. I lifted this from our Sensifiers webinar that we did, which is an EnerFit school, which has been done in East Ayrshire. I couldn't find any examples of commercial buildings in a rural context, but I will keep looking. I'll reach out to my network. But if you want to watch the Sensifiers webinar, there's some really interesting information on that, on detailing. So when you're thinking about retrofit guidance for traditional buildings, which is a large percentage in a rural context, then Historic Environment Scotland is second to none. They've done a lot of research, they've done a lot of technical guidance. These are all available on their website. I've just detailed a couple of them here. There are 9 current case studies for retrofit projects. So I would definitely recommend that you go on and access that in terms of further CPD. The Sustainable Traditional Building Alliance also has case studies for the kind of rural considerations. And it's just a really good resource. So past 2035, we can't have a retrofit CPD session without mentioning it. So past 2035 is the specification for proper assessment of dwellings and the design and implementation of retrofits for domestic dwellings. It sets out a pathway of a step-by-step retrofit. It's based on a risk assessment pathways for A, B or C, so small, medium, large if you like. There are 6 different roles within PAS 2035, and there is a real opportunity here for designers in Scotland to get ahead of the game. All public funding for retrofit, particularly in the fuel poverty, mandates PAS 2035 as the standard that they want domestic projects to follow. So we don't have a lot in Scotland, so there's a real opportunity here for designers to get ahead of this and to be PAS 2035 ready. It monitors and evaluates the project from beginning to end. It's tenant focused. It's about assessing every measure. Again, it uses PHPP or recommends PHPP modelling and provides feedback throughout the whole process. So PAS 2035 is coming, so it's really important if you're working in the retrofit sector, you're working on retrofit projects, that you educate yourselves and hopefully get trained up. We've done PAS 2035 training at BEST. We've got modules online so you can access those. This is our low carbon learning programme which we deliver at BEST. It's not just about sitting at a computer and learning, it's about getting practical airtightness testing, vapour barrier training, and there's some really interesting modules. If you haven't heard of the Nidri Roads, it's a interfit project for tenements in Glasgow. Obviously there's tenements all over Scotland, so if you want to have a look at what the design considerations were for Nidri Roads, it's a really good one to take a look at. We are running an Understanding Domestic Retrofit training session right now for free. So all colleagues who are in Edinburgh or rural Edinburgh or the South East region, you can sign up online now. If you want to go online and sign up for that, you can. And we will be running courses in February and March. So get signed up to our newsletter, or the BEST newsletter, and keep abreast of that. And finally, I thought this might interest architects because it's a steel rig and we've got it set up at the back of the factory. If you come for the tour, you can trial different detailing, wall makeups. If you wanted to do your own, this is a project we're doing in partnership with Morrison, I think it's for school. You know, we need to trial new detailing. That is something that we're considering for One What Place. So if you've got ideas, things that you want to trial, things that you want trained on, just get in touch. That's what BEST is here for, and we've got some amazing resources on our website. So yeah, get signed up, get in touch, and I'd be happy to help. Thanks for listening, and I'll pass on to Sam.
Sarah, we're just going to do the poll first. Up on everyone's screen just now.
Apologies. Yeah, retrofit is an emerging sector which requires upskilling at scale. So what area is most useful? And this is really for me to deliver our next kind of focused training session. So what do you want to find out more about? Building physics and energy modelling, PAS 2035, passive house or interfit detailing, or is it the practical training sessions in the factory? Let us know and we will listen and let you know what's happening in your area. Fantastic. What that says to me is all of it. So I'll get those modules organised and get in touch with everybody and let you know when they're running. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Sam Patterson, and as Tom and Sarah have introduced earlier, I'll be talking a bit more about sustainable insulation and the different materials that we're looking at BEST. One of the reasons why I'll be talking about this is that within the sustainability team, one of my roles is looking at future materials, supply chains, and how we help decarbonize the materials that we use in our buildings. So looking at how we lower embodied carbon and operational carbon with natural fibre and recycled insulation products, I'm going to talk briefly about some research we've been conducting with Zero Waste Scotland and Edinburgh University. We'll look at the materials available in Scotland by Scottish companies Sizewell Tech and the Sizewell 100, and Indie Nature and Indie Breathe. And I'll cover some of the equipment that we have in our innovation factory for trying out new things. And I'll finish up with some observations of routes for increasing the use of natural fibre and recycled insulation products. So here's the research I've been talking about. It's a piece of desktop research funded by Zero Waste Scotland and Built Environment Smart Transformation, and delivered by University of Edinburgh, specifically Julio Bros Williamson. And the idea here is just to try and pull together all the knowledge that is out there, but with a Scotland focus, pulling the Scottish lens over what the supply chain looks like, and what the opportunities are for Scotland and Scottish projects. Some of the key challenges that we identified is knowledge, and the default for specifiers to go to what they know best. Natural fibre products account for about 1% of the UK market share at the moment, and that other 99% of a handful of companies are very well established with a lot of handy U-value calculators, technical support teams, PDFs, and a huge array of support to evidence how their products can benefit your project. But a lot of the natural fibre and circular insulation products are coming from a new start. They're not as well developed, so gaining that knowledge, having that understanding, and being able to challenge the status quo is part of that challenge going forward. But then also pounds versus carbon and at what cost. So as we looked at whole carbon life cycle assessments, how do we move that shift to fabric first principles? And traditionally, insulation has been a product that you don't see that can get value engineered, subtracted for something else, because a lot of people just see it as a U value. Is it going to do the thing that I needed to do? And the justification there is that over the course of its building life cycle is, no matter how high embodied carbon the product is, it'll recoup more than that includes. But as we look at the carbon going into buildings, that'll become more under scrutiny. And making that transition to invest in those thermal properties comes with its own challenges, especially when you consider the thermal performance. So synthetic products can be 0.03 watts per meter Kelvin compared to 0.04 for natural fibers. And if you're taking that into wall thicknesses, you're looking at about an extra 70 to 80 mil of material to achieve the same performance. But the thing to note is that that doesn't exceed the energy savings of the products either, and typically a lot lower carbon usage. When you look at the carbon performance there, synthetic materials range between about 20 to 45 megajoules per kilogram of product. Recycled products can be between 4 and 20. But most natural fibers, things that are grown, things that are embodying carbon out of the environment so that are grown, around 4 megajoules per kilogram of product. So quite a significant drop. And the thing I like to reinforce is that it's more than just U values. There are way more benefits to a natural insulation choice than just that overall performance, but it comes with its challenges. Things like having a higher heat capacity and a higher density means that at peak summer, during some of the heat waves that we had last year, you may be able to offset and delay some of the heat transfer through the building fabric at peak times. And that higher density, that higher heat capacity means that natural fibers are able to hold more, unlike things like PIR or foams that transfer that heat a lot faster. So as we look to insulate our homes for winter, we also need to make sure that we're not creating overheating issues for the summer. So looking at some of the material categories that we've been looking at, there's natural fiber insulation that includes wood fiber, flax, hemp, sisal. Natural insulation products like cork or sheep's wool or straw that aren't necessarily fiber based. There's the recycled products, which do include things like glass wool and polyester from bottles, cotton fiber from textiles and fashion, and cellulose from newsprint and magazines. But then you're into the more familiar inorganic minerals, the glass wools, the slag, the rock wool, and into the fossil fuel derived polystyrenes, PIRs, PURs, and phenolic boards. And broadly, this is a kind of categorization of natural versus inorganic that we've been using. To assess all of these, we're looking at the global warming potential, taking data from life cycle analysis and environmental product declaration forms to compare and contrast. And there's a fantastic website that will put these into a pyramid of carbon. So you can see there that PIR foam board is 25 kilograms of CO2 equivalent for a global warming potential for a functional unit of a meter cubed. And as we come down through that list, you see more of the recycled products. And as you get into that green area where we're actually sequestering carbon and locking carbon in, you're getting into that natural fiber sector. So again, synthetic versus natural, it's not an easy switch. As I mentioned earlier, looking at the wall thicknesses and the challenges to detailing. Just purely on wall thickness alone, if you're moving from a wall builder of mineral wool and PIR on an internal insulation to achieve 0.15 U value for your wall buildup, you're looking to add about 80 mil to go to purely hemp-based insulation. So how is that shifting the property? Are you increasing your footprint of the foundation to maintain internal wall dimensions, or are you losing a bit of internal wall space when we already have quite small wall space standards in the UK? So these challenges are things that are going to be a dialogue between designers, clients, and contractors to maintain the balance. But also, as we look at wall buildups, how are we protecting for fire? As most of you will be aware, natural products do burn. The advantage of rock wool and glass wool is that it melts at over 1,000 degrees to be reduced. That's why it's so carbon intense in its production process. But to benefit from that fire performance, we need to sacrifice or add layers to then further protect the material. Natural fiber tends to be E-rated, so it will ignite and does add smoke. But it's how we use them and how we detail them to increase the use of these products. Again, just looking at some of the recycled content of material there, so things like the polyester fiber from Thermofleece, that is around 95% recycled content, because it's taking excess bedding, pillows, duvets, and mattresses, and taking that material and putting it back into a new product. But when you're looking at natural fiber, you have to think of all the products that go into the manufacturing process, especially with woven batt, because even though we'll be using, say, a wood fiber batt, we'll be using a polyester content to melt and hold those wood fibers together. So typically between 5 and 20% polyester content, even for things that look like wood fiber, unless you're going for a wet process rigid board. Part of the work that we're looking at the moment is how we map through the challenges and barriers. Now, I'm all too aware that in the central belt in Scotland, we are on the periphery of a typically Southeast and EU-based production supply chain for insulation. And that's exacerbated even further when we're getting up to the Highlands and Islands. And with such lightweight volumetric products, how do we reduce the risk, reduce the road miles? Things like EPS doesn't travel well in terms of insulation for damage before arriving at site, but also a lorry load of wood fiber from France can cost up to 40% of its cost is purely in transport. So how can we reduce the road miles consumed to reduce the costs and allow that to enter the market at a lower rate? Or if you think of products like the EPS, which typically can come from Eastern Europe, again, £4,000 per load of insulation coming across the channel. A lot of the cost of insulation is in the transport, so how can we use Scottish-based manufacturers to reduce that? Which brings me on quite nicely to companies like Sizeltech, who are a Edinburgh-based company looking at the use of sisal and circular waste textiles, including Harris tweed and other wools from the Scottish textile industry, to make a natural based product. At the moment, Sisal Wool 100 isn't BBA certificated, but they're working through a process to increase their production supply and gain those certifications. Whereby, in contrast, Indie Nature with their Indie Thin products do have a manufacturing facility up and running in the Borders in Jedburgh, and are in the process of going through their BBA certification at the moment. And I believe Sam and Scott are hopeful that that BBA certification will be completed within the next few months. and are producing product at the moment. So we're working with them on what we hope to be a CPD series and some further training, so keep an eye out for that, and hopefully be able to supply material from our first natural fibre installation product in Scotland for your project soon. If, on the other hand, you're looking to make your own and to look at other waste streams that you'd like to work with, we have our pilot installation line in the factory. This is a piece of equipment that can try different material recipes, different lengths, so we can test thermal resistance, fire performance, moisture performance, and see if there's a new product that we can take to market. We also have some equipment in the factory for blown fibre testing and density testing, where we're looking to fill panels for off-site construction and test the settlements to reduce heat loss at the head of that panel. So just to summarise, routes for increased natural fibre and recycled insulation use. Really, part of it is just demand-based. As I say, we're starting from a low level of 1% market share, and the development of demand. Architects and specifiers are probably the ones most eager to address this, but we need to see the policy that follows. We look at what the French have done with their 50% natural products in public buildings. That has really accelerated their transition to wood fibre use, taking their domestic market share to about 12–13% for wood fibre-based products. Things like the Net Zero Public Buildings Standard is currently optional, but we'll see that become more and more of a required standard, with embodied carbon targets getting wrapped into building regs over the next few years. And that's a journey that I think a lot of people are recognizing is happening, and it's now a case of how we get there and have a just transition towards those new areas. As Sarah touched on, skills and training, having skilled installers for the new products, having that familiarity with a new material type, and you can install it well and appropriately so there's no gaps or heat loss. And also for all of you, just care and attention, because check the environmental product declaration form. Just because you specified a wood fibre product, it doesn't mean it's all created equally. It might be made in the UK, it might be made in France, it might be shipped from around the world. So understanding that most products will declare their carbon based on cradle to gate, understanding where in the world that gate is and how far it is to get to your site, and your use of that product or your wastage can have a huge impact on the levels of emissions from the use of insulation. But I'm sure there's a lot more questions there, and I'll hand back to the team and we'll open up the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. That was great. Just wait for Tom to join, and we've got a few questions here, so I will go through these. And we are right on time, so we've got just about 10 minutes for questions. So first one's a really easy one, Tom. How do we access MISH support?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Apologies if I maybe didn't cover that in enough detail as we whizzed through earlier. Some of you may have come across this webinar through the MISH portal, Make It Smart Hub portal. For those who haven't, there is a particular website which we'd encourage you to sign up, and then that allows you access to previous webinars, content, lots of online information, but importantly, direct way of communicating with both myself and Sarah, and then we can arrange specific meetings and follow-up conversations to understand where on your journey you need support. Thanks.
Fantastic. Yep, get in touch with us and we'll come and meet you and visit you and show you all the equipment, or some of the project support inquiries we've been involved in have been really niche, so I've had to go in do lots of research on rock dust and the use and fertiliser of rock dust. So no matter how weird and wonderful your idea is, just get in touch with us and we can help. We're funded to do that. So yeah. Question from Ewan. Thank you, Ewan. Prioritise areas for delivery against national and local priorities. I think that might be on one of my slides. Why not start with the most difficult, challenging areas rather than the easier populated areas? And I think, yeah, that's a good point. I'll let everyone come in on that, but for us, that's what AMCF is about. It's about trying to access that rural challenge and where we can support, and that's what the LKES plans are looking at as well, because they will identify which areas, which zones need to be tackled first. So I think feeding into your local LKES plan, Ewan, have a look at that. If they're not working on it already, then if you've got ideas or you've got knowledge around that, then definitely get in touch with your local authority. Tom, do you have anything else?
No, yeah, other than say, obviously the Make It Smart Hub project and program is specifically to help some of the lesser populated areas. I mean, I think the point there about it being maybe needs driven, you know, is maybe, you know, and through that process, as Sarah's outlined, is a way of identifying that.
Yeah. A question from Katrina. Thank you, Katrina. Retrofit projects would be much easier to promote with clients if that was reduced or removed. Yeah, can best help lobby government on this. And Tom and I must think alike because we both went on and found the research. So I think it's already happening. Tom, did you read the? I think you shared the articles, but yeah, we're already lobbying government. Architects Journal has a good link to that.
Well, and so I guess key there is obviously it's a UK HMRC issue. So I'm aware that Scottish ministers have written to UK government around that in the lead up to the 2040 housing programme. So yeah, we work closely with Scottish government. So I'm sure if there's, you know, weight we can lend to that, but I'd say that is kind of in hand, but absolutely more could be done on that front.
Yep, absolutely. We've got a question for Tom. Please ask Sam why hempcrete was not included in the material categories. We found that to be the best material to use in Scotland.
We had to draw a line somewhere, and I suppose when we're looking at a feasibility study for insulation products, everything does have a thermal resistance product, but we were looking at really pure insulation products. Hempcrete is another fantastic insulator. It can be applied in different ways. There's other products like which we didn't include, like lime-based renders with cork granules that has a thermal insulation property. Things like earth building, rammed earth from Earth Building UK and Ireland, and the work that eBookie do. But when we're looking at how we apply these products and materials to a traditionally timber frame based industry for residential, we were looking at what could be applied in frame or over frame, although yes, there's a lot of other materials that weren't part of that categorization.
Yeah, I think we all struggled with the 15-minute brief today to what to fit in, so it's purely just been a choice of time, and we would have included hempcrete if we had more time. It's not because we don't like hempcrete. Question from Marcus on rural housing. How can homeowners be incentivised to upgrade the fabric performance of their homes in line with policy targets? It's a huge challenge. It's being debated in Scottish Government whether it needs to be more than the EPC trigger when you sell your house. I personally have just moved house and I'm going to be looking at the retrofitting of my home. There are grants that you can access through Home Energy Scotland and grants and also loans as well. So there are a number of local community retrofit organisations that you can join. One of them that I'm a member of is Local Homes. So this is about taking that kind of owner-occupier sector and educating ourselves on what we need to do and think about in terms of retrofitting our homes. There's some really great solutions detailing good installers that get shared on that network. So I think with the homeowners, there's an education piece, there's a messaging piece. Tom, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I guess the word incentivise there in the question, yeah, there's obviously some financial support in some situations depending on the house type, but yeah, I guess education and awareness is key, and hopefully that then leads into kind of, you know, a market. You know, if you're buying a home, you look for these retrofit upgrades. So if you follow best social media, because there's going to be some support and promotion around support education pieces for homeowners coming up again in the next few months. So watch this space.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. It's a big question, but yeah, we'll get there if we work together. Question from Saffron: how do small companies in rural areas increase capacity to meet retrofit demands? And I think it's a really key question. It's easy to talk about skill shortages. The reason I joined BEST was to do with skill shortages, because I worked in that sector and I was I was sick of having conversations about skill shortages, but there is a huge labour demand problem across every sector. It's not just construction now, it's call centre, it's medical, it's aerospace, it's manufacturing. So, you know, there is a lack of new young people coming into construction. One of the first things we need to do is stop talking negatively about ourselves as a sector and try and encourage young people to come and work in the sector. I think from a rural perspective, there's also we need to attract people to stay in the rural communities and attract people to rural communities. So the skills and training help is out there. It's actually the people. You know, how do we attract them into the industry as a whole? And I think we do need to get in at the education level at schools and colleges and change the way we speak to our children about working in construction. Tom, do you, or Sam, any insight?
No, maybe just with the time we've left, we could just cover maybe one more of the questions we've got then.
Yeah. Question from Samika. How can you ensure a just transition when those who don't have the funds to spend will not be able to retrofit their homes? So this is being covered by Scottish Government policy. So all homes in Scotland who are at risk of fuel poverty, who don't have the funds to spend, can access retrofitting through the Warmer Homes programme. So it's Changeworks, Warmworks and Energy Saving Scotland. And if you are struggling with fuel poverty, then you have grant funding which is available to you to retrofit your house. Okay, so the able to pay against those who are struggling to pay, the Scottish Government are fully supportive of that sector. So please get in touch with us and we'll tell you how to access that support. Yeah, and that finishes it nicely to say thank you to everybody for attending. Thanks for listening. Thanks to our speakers. And please do give us our feedback. We'd love to hear what you think and get in touch if you want to find out more. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.